Let's have a look at this passage, Hosea chapter 3. It's a short chapter, but there's quite a lot in it. Not working. You'll have to do it. Okay. Then the Lord said to me, "Go again, love a woman who is loved by a lover and is committing adultery, just like the love of the Lord for the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love the raisin cakes of the pagans. So I brought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and 1.5 homers of barley, and I said to her, you shall stay with me many days, you shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man, so too I will be toward you. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, without ephod or teraphim. Afterward the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king. They shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days." Just a background to the first few verses there, what has happened in the narrative of the story, Gomer has again been unfaithful to Hosea, and he has, contrary to normal practice, brought her back again into his family, as it were. But he says that, go again, love a woman who is loved by a lover and is committing adultery. That's what she's been doing. And he compares this to the love of the Lord for the children of Israel. Says that they too have been following other gods, following the raisin cakes of the pagans. So what he does, he brings her back to himself, and he buys her back into his family, if you like. He says, you shall stay with me many days, you shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man, so too I will be towards you. So he brings her back, but he doesn't bring her back into a complete marriage relationship. In other words, they will not have any sexual relations. He won't know her. He'll bring her back, but she will be, as it were, there before him, but not in a relationship with him. Also, she will not go play the harlot anymore. She won't be playing the harlot after other gods. So, as you can see, there's a parallel with this in what we're going to see what happens with Israel. So Gomer's been unfaithful and Israel's been unfaithful, but in this passage they're brought back into some relationship with the Lord, but not into a total relationship. There's something missing. He doesn't know her as a husband. And this is seen as a parallel with the present situation of the Jewish people in relation to God. They're brought back into some relationship with God. They are still the people of God in one sense, but they're not in the relationship of knowing the Lord personally, because that can only happen through knowing Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah. And they can only become, again, the wife of the Lord, the bride of Jehovah, if you like, through faith in Jesus the Messiah. And this is what the passage is going to tell us something about. So you have Israel in unbelief, still believing in God, believing in the Torah, not going after idols in the time of the diaspora, but also not in a personal relationship with the Lord, not in a place to know God through redemption, but to be preserved as a people who will be brought back to the Lord at the end of days. Now, rabbinic teaching sees verse 4 as a picture of Israel in the present diaspora condition. Verse 4, the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, without ephod or teraphim. Concerning this verse, there was a rabbi called Rabbi David Kimchi who wrote in the 12th century. He said, "These are the days of the present captivity in which we are in the power of the Gentiles and in the power of their kings and their princes, and we're without a sacrifice, without an image, without a sacrifice to God, without an image to false gods, and without an ephod, and without teraphim, without an ephod to God by means of which we could foretell the future, as with the Urim and Thummim, and without teraphim to false gods." Next one. Can you turn it on? Yeah, okay. This is actually quoted by a man called David Barron in a book called The Ancient Scriptures for the Modern Jew, which I have to confess I got a lot of the information which I'm sharing with you about Hosea from. David Barron he said that this showed how the present period of what he called the interregnum between the first and second coming of the Messiah applies to the present condition of Israel in the dispersion. If you don't know who David Barron is, he was an early pioneer of the Hebrew Christian Messianic movement. Came to England as a refugee from Jewish persecution in Tsarist Russia in the 19th century. Came from a religious Jewish family. He was very well taught in the scriptures, Hebrew scriptures. He arrived off a boat on the east coast of England, I think it was in Hull, and as he was staying in his lodging, somebody gave him a copy of the New Testament. What did he do with the New Testament? He read it. What was the result of him reading the New Testament? He came to believe that Yeshua, Jesus, is the Messiah. He then wrote back a letter to his father in Russia and said that he had become a believer in Jesus, the Messiah. His father sent him back a letter saying, "To my late son David," and cut him off, said, "Don't communicate with me anymore. As far as I'm concerned, you're a Meshamud, a traitor. Don't have any communication with me because you believed in the God of the Gentiles. You've gone over to the other side, as it were, and you're now an idol worshipper, worshipping that man, Jesus." Very painful letter, as you can imagine. Didn't put him off his faith. And in fact, at the end of his life, he did have some reconciliation with his father, as his father came to recognize that he hadn't become a Christian to stop being Jewish. He'd become more Jewish through believing in Jesus, and he'd used his time to spread the gospel message to Jewish people, founding an organization called the Hebrew Christian Testimony to Israel, which continues to this day in the form of the Messianic Testimony. And he traveled extensively throughout Europe, preaching the gospel to Jewish communities, and did other members of the testimony. Also, interestingly, he attended the first Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897, saying that he saw the beginning of the dry bones of Israel coming together in preparation for the restoration of the Jewish state, quoting from Ezekiel chapter 37 about the dry bones. When he was there, apparently some delegates wanted to throw him out because he was a Hebrew Christian. And they said he shouldn't be at this Congress. Theodor Herzl, who was the man convenient, objected to this and said that Barron could stay because he was a good Jew and he was believing in the restoration of Israel. And in fact, apparently Herzl went down and sat next to Herzl went and sat next to David Barron just to show his solidarity with him. And no doubt David Barron shared with him something of the gospel. But he was a great man, and he did a great deal to influence what has become the Messianic movement. Great studies on the scriptures, including on this passage in in Hosea. Okay, let's go back to the text of Hosea. So in the text we read that it said that you'll be many days without these things, without certain things are going to be not there during a period of many days. Okay, the word for Hebrew in many days is yamim rabim. So many days implies actually a long period, long indefinite period, embracing even centuries or millennia. And during this period, the Jewish people are going to remain as a distinct people who for the majority will retain a faith in God based on Torah observance given by God, but with the addition of Talmudic Judaism, which is not inspired by God. And rabbinic Talmudic teaching would actually become a major barrier against Jewish people believing in Jesus as the Messiah, along with anti-Semitic teaching from the church. They've got two actual barriers towards Jews believing in Jesus today. That's what the rabbis teach them about Jesus, and what the church has historically done in persecuting the Jews, saying the Jews killed Jesus, they're under a curse, and we shall exclude them from our fellowship and have nothing to do with them and treat them as awful people, even persecuting them. Right against what Jesus said, right against what Paul said in Romans. Total opposite. So this will be the condition during this time. But at the time of the end, there'll be a physical restoration of the Jewish people to the land of Israel and a spiritual restoration to the Lord. Now, on this subject, one has to say it's not correct to say that the church has replaced Israel. But I've done a little pamphlet here, which is on the table, called Is the Church the New Israel? Although it is correct to say that the new covenant through the Messiah Jesus, as revealed in Jeremiah 31, Matthew 26, in the breaking of bread as we've just read, and in Hebrews chapter 8, has replaced the former covenant made through Moses as the way for people today, both Jewish and Gentile, to come to know the Lord. So the church hasn't replaced Israel. Israel remains a people before the Lord. But the church, the true church, has replaced the way in which we can come to know God through the new covenant. You don't come to know God through going to the synagogue and trying to keep the law of Moses. You come to know God today through repentance and faith in Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah, and the new covenant. Okay. And Jesus, Yeshua, also spoke about the future for Israel. Jesus prophesied the coming dispersion of the Jewish people. He also indicates they're going to remain an identifiable people through the long years of the diaspora, to be restored at the time when they recognize him as the Messiah. Matthew 23 says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house is left you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more, till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Speaking there about the desolation of Jerusalem, which was going to come with the destruction of the temple and the dispersion of the Jewish people. And he says, your house is left you desolate. You're going to see me no more. Now, a lot of the church would actually like to stop that sentence there. You will see me no more, finished. God's finished with the Jews. But he doesn't say that. He says, you will see me no more until you say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, which is actually the traditional greeting of the Jewish people for the coming of the Messiah. So Jesus is saying if they're going to say that at the end of days, they've got to be preserved during this time of the dispersion as an identifiable people. Can you see that? And in the next verse in Luke chapter 21, he says something similar. He says in verse 23, there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people, and they will be torn full by the edge of the sword. They'll be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Again, you got that word until. It's going to be a time of wrath, of desolation, of dispersion, being led away captive into all nations, speaking of the dispersion of the Jewish people to the nations, which has happened in our time. We've seen Jewish people spread to the east, the west, the north, the south, in all nations. And he says Jerusalem is going to be trampled or ruled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So there's going to be some time in which God's going to reverse this process, bring the people back to the land, bring them back to the Lord, and bring Jerusalem back under the control of the Lord. It's not there yet, by the way, but it's on its way. Note the use of the word until implies a preservation of the Jewish people until the time of the end when God will begin to reveal Yeshua to them, and it's all that is in the context of the second coming of Jesus.